Philosophy and religion have always been huge interests of mine. I spent a good portion of my life bouncing from doctrine to philosophy to belief, trying to convince myself that something was true, whether it was Christianity or Buddhism or Marxism or atheism. Right now, I would call myself an atheist or agnostic. But the idea that I subscribe to the most would be philosophical skepticism. And ultimately, I believe that we can't really know anything about anything. This might not be as dreadful as it sounds. For example, I'm a big fan of science. I think that we can know certain things relative to our experience. For example, we know that if we pick up an orange and let go of it, it will fall to the floor. As long as we're on Earth, where the gravity is strong enough, that will happen every time. No matter what type of object you drop, it will fall to the ground. So we know that gravity is true. When I say true, I mean it's true relative to our perception, to our experience of reality. It's true insofar as we are able to perceive it and insofar as it holds up as something that can be tested and retested and experimented with. So yeah, I think we can have relative truth. Things are relatively true to our life and our perception. But when it comes to questions about God and heaven and hell and stuff like that, I finally gave up my pursuit, and I wouldn't call it apathy or complacency or despair or anything like that. It's a consent to ignorance. It's what an ancient Greek philosopher called knowledgeable ignorance. You're aware of your own ignorance. That is, on certain matters, especially metaphysics like God and what happens after death. I don't say that not only do I not know, but we can't know. We cannot know anything about God or spirits. We can't really know many things, what's out there in the universe. And I say this because I can demonstratively prove to you that you cannot even know that you actually exist in the sense that you think you do. And this is, as far as I'm aware, an unrefutable argument. And I'm sharing it with you because I read it a few years back, and it's always stuck with me. Whenever someone makes a bold truth claim about something that you know they're full of shit, you can refer to this argument, and it might be scary to some people because it just screams of uncertainty, and it shows that we really can't be too certain about anything. This argument is called the brain-in-the-vat. It's an old philosophical argument, and it's been reworked in many ways. For example, the movie The Matrix is kind of a rehash of the brain-in-the-vat argument. So is the movie Vanilla Sky. And you may have heard people casually pondering the deeper questions of life, and they ask themselves something like, hey, maybe this is just a dream, or maybe it's a dream inside of a dream, or maybe, all of you and all of the world is just inside my head and I'm all alone, or maybe I'm just inside your head and we're just a part of your dream. I know that sounds silly, but such skepticism and such uncertainty can be proven to be the best stance to take towards reality. As frightening as it is, I would assert that we can't really know anything about anything, even our own existence. I'm going to prove to you that you can't know for certain that you even really exist. So hopefully it doesn't mess with your head too much. Brain in the vat. Okay, so here goes the narration. In philosophy, the brain in the vat is an element used in a variety of thought experiments intended to draw out certain features of our ideas of knowledge, reality, truth, mind, and meaning. It is drawn from the idea, common to many science fiction stories, that a mad scientist might remove a person's brain from their body, suspend it in a vat of life-sustaining liquid, and connect its neurons by wires to a supercomputer which would provide it with electrical impulses identical to those the brain normally receives. According to such stories, the computer would then be simulating reality, including appropriate responses to the brain's own output. and the person with the disembodied brain would continue to have perfectly normal conscious experiences without these being related to objects or events in the real world. The simplest use of the brain-in-the-vat scenario is an argument for philosophical skepticism. A simple version of this runs as follows. Since the brain in a vat gives and receives the exact same impulses as it would if it were in a skull, and since these are its only way of interacting with its environment, then it is not possible to tell, from the perspective of that brain, whether it is in a skull or a vat. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that neat little narration with the cool brain in the vat pictures. Really high-tech shit, ain't it? But yeah, so it follows from that argument, technically, that since you cannot know whether you are a brain in a vat or not, then you cannot know whether most of your beliefs might be completely false. Is there any way for you to truly prove to yourself or to anyone else that you are not, as of this moment, a brain in a vat being fed reality from a computer? And so you're in there thinking that you're walking out in the sun or sitting here watching a YouTube video when really you're just hooked up to a bunch of wires. And as crazy and as silly as it may sound, it's true. You cannot prove that you're not a brain in the vat. Not to yourself, not to me, not to anyone else. And so, as silly as that may sound, it's a rigorous philosophical argument that holds up to anything I've heard thus far, because it can't be disproved. And it might be true. And if that scenario even might be true, you have to admit that it's kind of silly for us, perhaps, to take our beliefs too seriously. If we can't even know that we really exist, it's really ridiculous and arrogant for us to say that we can know the grand truths of the universe, at least in my own opinion. So this, as weird as it is, has a lot to do with my atheism and my skepticism on many things. I consider it, I guess, a form of humility, and that may just be my pride speaking, but I try to stay humble because, after all, I might just be a brain in the vat. Maybe this is a hallucination. Maybe it's like the Matrix. Maybe we're just a dream inside of God's head. And I know this sounds like just a lot of philosophical, word games, but these are actual rational arguments that can't be shown to be false. So I'd rather stay on the safe side. It would be nice if we could say we could know for an absolute fact that God exists or that we live on after death, but we can't know. We can't know too many things, not even that we exist. So I try to remain humble, and when it comes to the bigger questions, I say, I don't know. And even though sometimes that can be a little bit depressing because we are curious creatures by nature, I'd rather be humble, and I guess it leaves a lot of mystery out there for us to explore. Maybe one day we'll be able to prove the brain in the vat argument wrong. Until then, I'm a skeptic. So, hope you enjoyed. Peace. Oh, I want to make one more quick note here about science. Earlier in the video, I used an example of gravity and saying that we can know if we pick up an orange and drop it, it'll fall to the ground every time. And this is why science works, because even if we are just all brains in a vat, in the world of the simulation, oranges still fall to the ground. So even if this is just all hallucination, some parts of the hallucination are consistent, and that's how we can determine the theories and the laws of nature in science. Whether I'm a brain in a vat or not, regardless of that, an orange still falls to the ground every time I drop it out of my hand. So even if gravity is just an illusion, in my brain because I'm in a vat, it's consistent and it works in the world of the hallucination. So science is a way of knowing things relative to our experience, whether our experience is genuine or whether it's just the experience of a brain being hooked up to wires. Okay.